morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank António Calçada de Sá, Board President of the Portuguese Diaspora Council, for this kind invitation. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be with all of you today. May I also greet all the authorities here, some just left, but then it's really great to be here with all of you today, with all our distinguished guests. And may I also, here still we have the Vice Dean of Nova University, and may I greet all the speakers and everyone involved in this very interesting event. I shall not take the opportunity as moderator to deliver a keynote speech because we just had a very interesting one by His Excellency, our Minister for the Economy and Maritime Affairs. And indeed he has already made us think about several issues that we shall explore in this panel on digital transformation and how to promote greater integration of the global digital ecosystem. My role here then will be to facilitate a discussion with our 7 distinguished speakers on key issues related to digital transformation and how to promote such ecosystemic global integration, a theme that no one doubts that warrants critical relevance today and for the future of all of us, for our collective future, but also, of course, and like His Excellency, our Minister already pointed out, has also some greater opportunities for cooperation and proactive collaboration between our continents of Africa and Europe. And that's here what we are here to do. I shall briefly introduce our 7 distinguished speakers in this panel today, and then we will sit down and then start with the first round of debate, and later on proceed according to the dynamics of the panel. So we will have with us today Abdellah Manou, the Director of National Airports Authority of Morocco, ONDA. Then we will have Audrey Mothoupi, Fellow of the African Leadership Initiative and CEO of Systemic Logic Group of South Africa. João Vieira, the Managing Director of Operations and Technology of the MDS Group, Portugal. Nana Ozu Banene, the Country Director of Ghana and other African markets, ASZA Finance Ghana. Norman Albi, I'm sorry because I think I got 2 versions of the speakers. Let me, no, it's true, indeed, we were just, so I would like to correct that from AZA Finance in Ghana, we have Po Shi Yan here today. Thank you for being here as well. Javier Salvador, the CFO from Medusa in Ireland. Pedro Novo, the Head of Consultancy, Indra, Portugal. And Sean Drake, the CEO of Africa 5, United States of America. So may I invite all our distinguished speakers to join me here? I'll sit here. Yes, please, take a seat. Let me just... So, thank you for being here today with us, and a warm welcome to all of you. I prepared here some questions, to break the ice and somehow give us a sense of some structure also in this panel, starting from the general to particular in a rather deductive way, but then we'll take it from there as the dynamics of the panel warrants. So my first question would be directed to Pedro Novo. Pedro, from a leading position in a quite internationalized company, working in many geographies, notably, of course, in Europe and Africa, you have a privileged perspective of what's going on at the digital level in a fair part of the world. My first question, is there such a thing, do you consider is there such a thing as a global digital ecosystem? And what's holding up a better and greater integration of such ecosystem?
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation for Indra company to be present over here. Well, first of all, just give you a bit of context, okay? I'm Portuguese, but I live in Luanda, in Angola, for the last 5 years, and well, working in Angola for the last more than 10 years, okay? So I have an understanding, well, at least from my perspective, of this relationship between Europe and Africa. I'm representing Indra, and yes, we strongly believe that there is a growing trend toward the creation of a global digital ecosystem, first of all, okay, and going directly to your question. That's why this year we opened a new office of Indra. We already have a strong presence in Africa, but we recently opened Luanda Indra office this year in April, and this show our belief on this global digital ecosystem. This global digital ecosystem, as Dr. António Costa Silva has told us, has a number of drivers that are driving this ecosystem, but the mains are about all this digital revolution, as Mr. António Costa Silva told us, and he named it, about interconnection, the rise of the cloud computing, the big data, artificial intelligence, about bringing all of this together, okay, is what is driven, in my perspective, this global digital ecosystem. Of course, there are some challenges on this development, and I will focus on three main challenges. The different regulatory frameworks between the countries, okay? The lack of interoperability between platforms, that it's still happening, and the digital divide. What does this mean? About not everybody could access the technology, which create gaps between the people. And when we speak about technology, the end of technology should be the people. So in Angola, at least from my perspective, one of the things that we live every day is this lack of competencies that is still existing in a country like Angola, in a city like Luanda. Despite these challenges, there are things to promote this global digital ecosystem. These events and these platforms of innovation, international cooperation, that's what we're doing right here, the investment on infrastructures that the governments should do, and the support for innovation. These are, in my perspective, three of the things to promote this digital. I think working together as we're doing on these days would develop this global digital ecosystem, and will benefit everybody in the world, okay?
Thank you so much, Pedro. Indeed, there's an expression that you use that I would like to take it from there on the digital divide and ask Audrey. Audrey, it's very important also to draw on your experience in promoting an inclusive approach to the use of technologies. What's the state of the art of this so-called digital divide? How relevant is it in Africa, or for that matter, in other geographies? How can we make the digital ecosystem more inclusive and less unequal?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna, and thanks to everybody. I think the set of this morning, where it's actually the digital divide or the digital issue is not an African issue. We're connected, and I think from all of us sitting here know that that is the future to solve what we need to do. A simple fact, 60% of that 1.4 billion that we heard this morning is still not connected in Africa. We've got a burgeoning youth that is emerging, and that is the future. Europe is sitting with an aging population. That aging population in a future where we've got a youthful population sitting in the African continent. So when you talk about the divide and my experience around creating inclusivity and access, that inclusivity applies to all of us. It means that we have a responsibility, as we've heard this morning, to ensure that the policies, the frameworks, the governance structures are aligned to enable that success going forward. When I look at the experience in the continent and the work that I've done, we're going to have a conversation around finance. If I look at financial inclusivity that took place, we see that lives change. From a digital point of view, it means saving lives. It means creating an opportunity for employment. It means an opportunity for innovation and bringing to the fore some of the ideas that will solve problems in the future. I'll use a simple practical example. In South Africa, we have a lot of organizations and a lot of startups and incubators focused around how do we actually begin to shift from a digital, from where we are to be inclusive from a digital point of view. And most of us think that it needs to be something we start at the top. A simple example is I believe that every single one of us here today, we need to go back to the basics. Where there's access, there's opportunity. And some of those basics include creating opportunities in small-scale spaces that you can. There's an organization called We Think Code. We all have phones. If you can Google that, you'll find out about it. And We Think Code actually is a partnership in South Africa with a public-private partnership with organizations and European nations as well. It's a simple idea. You take students, not necessarily graduates, from across the country and across the continent. They come for a 2-year program. They learn how to code. They learn how to build apps, data, crypto. And in those 2 years, you take them out, and with public-private partnerships, they're employed. So they didn't have to go through many years. They didn't have to be excluded. But you now have young, youthful, digitized individuals who are now prepared for the future. The second example, back to the practicalities of the future, is to say that we all have a responsibility, both in the private and public sector, to begin to develop the skills. So the skills capability is another aspect of it. So we've had about policy, we've had about governance, but the skills component, it's not really about creating access to skills. It's simply saying we all have a responsibility to close that divide by beginning to think through what the skills of the future will look like. So in my own experience, we focus on data science and data scientists, data analytics, simple things into the future. Every single opportunity in the future, whether it's relating to climate, relating to government, to governance issues, we've had about the policies that need to change. There's an opportunity for skills relating to data to come in. An example, if I link back to Europe, recently I was in Helsinki and I had the privilege of visiting a satellite company called ICEYE. Simple company based in Helsinki. Think about it. What does ICEYE do? Like any of the satellite companies above, they're gathering data to track trends around flooding information. That data is collected sometimes after the effect. It's effective for insurance companies, as an example, that can identify where the risks are in the future. Now picture this. Why shouldn't we be collecting that data using a simple fisherman somewhere in Malawi who understands, they not have documented it, understands, which is why we need to digitize that information, through intergenerational feedback and information, the last 25 years based on my uncle, my father, stories of how the weather patterns are and what has changed. Now, the combination of collecting that data and that information, together with the satellite companies sitting here, some of you probably work for them, a collaborative partnership could possibly shift the inclusivity, the awareness of the weather patterns, and it's no longer a reactive, but it's more predictive. So I think for me, part of the challenge that I constantly put forward in that digital divide is the partnerships. It's about the we, it's about the rise. Anita, you said about it, but it's actually looking at the we in a different manner. I love the comment about we need to be asking what Africa wants to do, as opposed to how do we save Africa. The wanting to do is a combination of picking and understanding some of the challenges and the risks, and the digital economy is the future, because we can enable fast information, fast solutions, and be connected. But sadly, the opposite side of it, what are the barriers to entry? Access to funding is a big issue. Infrastructure, energy. I come from a country where right now we're realizing, and most of you would know, that energy is critical, connectivity that's consistent. So when you're having issues such as blackouts and load shedding, an incubator hub in the middle of nowhere, the skills are wasted because there's no consistent connectivity around that. So I think, in short, my challenge and my call to action is in the journey towards the we, let's innovate and find those solutions, but let's partner across the divide in closing the divide.
Thank you, Audrey. Very interesting set of perspectives that we shall also take on in the next interventions for sure. I'd like to follow up with Abdellah Menou. You deal with a very important area, transportation and mobility, specifically in the airport sector. As a leader in a sector that is, somehow less and less popular due to sustainability challenges, but it's a very key sector for all of us and undergoing important change and disruption. Please let us know in which ways and how can your area improve global integration in this new digital era, and if and how are Europe and Africa cooperating in this field?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for inviting me to this forum. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Taborda for his kind invitation to be with you in this important forum, EurAfrican. It's my privilege to be with you today. And I would like to speak about 3 points and steps globally, African, local African, and how to Morocco improve the technologies in digital transformations, especially for the air transport system. And after, I would like to give some recommendations for the forum and for the new students, because we are in the big school of business. There are some challenges for us in the future because the development of AI and digital transformation become very fast development technology, and we need to think and to respect and expect the history of these transformations and AI development. So globally, digital technologies are increasing production. So also in disrupting the business models, and also enabling to many challenges for our humanity, for the present and the future. So the global objective of United Nations for Protection of Environment Program, so we have 17, I think, one for education, for health, and other things, but the important goals is to enhance the level of our life, especially of technology, of transformation system. They have reduced more than 20% of emission of dioxide of carbon, and reduce waste and dioxide in the supply chain system for 200 times. It's very important to assist these efforts of the United Nations Environmental Program. So in the area of my specialty in air transports, we make many projects, especially for the air navigation services. We have our friends from INRA here because we work with African countries and the Moroccan countries for air navigation, space service, and air transport. So the big example for our system is to improve the security, safety in the air transport system by using the technology of the satellite. A big program that we have is GNSS, Global Navigation Service Satellites. In Morocco, we work with some companies in Europe, but also with ASECNA. The ASECNA is the organization of African countries, 70 countries, that we work together for enhancing the global system of navigation services. And we implement this with the European Union and also with ASECNA, with the African organization, because in the world, as you see, we have International Civil Aviation Organization that they make many efforts for the world, but especially for Africa, to enhance security, safety, and accuracy and integrity of the global satellite system. And so we work together for MEDA region, especially for our Mediterranean region, because we have this program, METIS, Mediterranean Introduction Satellite Service. For many years we make this project, and now it's operational. This is one of the example that we share with you today for this EurAForum. But many project has been done in Morocco for the training. For example, when I was the director of Civil Aviation Academy in Morocco for 14 years, I served for many projects to make training and software system in our training program, and also in the digital technologies to give our engineer how to develop the system of improve a life of passengers working in the airports. It's very important, but the question that we ask now for everybody is this digitalization has been give us the big quality services in the airport or not? When we compare this all technology and all equipments that we have now in the airport, when you are passengers in the airport, what do you feel when you take this system in the airport that you can be compared with 10 years or 20 years before? You feel that some progression, some improvement, if you want. Did you feel this or not? The same for the States. Now, our colleague said that we have a young African country, Africa as a continent. Yes, but we have a huge potential in the Africa for the people, for the students, for the professors, for the faculties. We make a huge effort in this training, because we need just cheapest investments, small investments, because in the digital and the transformation and software, we need just development, we need just some AI, some programs. We don't need equipment, or big equipment, or expensive equipment. Then the gap should be reduced between rich countries and poor countries. I think that is this technology will be the key of the reduce the level of development between rich countries and poor countries. And this is a point that we can recommend for the future, for the student can make some PhD or some masters, to look and looking for how to have the tools to reduce this level of development between rich countries and the poor countries. And we need to enhance the level of life of some countries in Africa, because we have a huge potential. We have young students, we have young potential people, so can be develop many systems for our life, like that we can what we do now in the airports and the infrastructures and other area of development.
Thank you so much, Adela. So picking on some of the issues you raised, notably, the importance of infrastructure and safety, security, I would like to jump now to our speaker, João Vieira, that is a leader in the insurance sector. And, in topics like this and, digital transformation, also considering these issues that have been raised in different interventions, in this environment of ever-increasing volatility, what is the role of the insurance sector and how it can be effective in its contribution to help the system work and promote such global integration?
Well, first, good morning. Thank you for the invitation, and to all board team of Diáspora with the collaboration that we are having between MDS and Diáspora. Well, as MDS is a broker, is a global broker, so we play a very important role in terms of ensure the risks of the business. And the risks around digitalization are not different from others. They have risk, they have challenges. You know that currently one of the major threats is around cyber risk, okay? And I think there is a way to work in terms of companies and governments be aware around the risk and how they can protect themselves against that risk, okay? So to give you some numbers, for example, as we are in Portugal, the number of companies that has cyber risk is below 10%. If you go to US, a very developed country around digitalization, you are with 47%. So one of the things that everybody should be aware is how they can protect their business, because most part of the business currently are attached to digital. So that is one of the big concerns that we as a broker have. And a part of that, there is another topic around managing the risk. So there is also us in our sector, in insurance, we can play a very important role to mitigate those risks. So selling the insurance is important, but more important is support the companies, how they can protect themselves to attack, for example. So, well, to be honest, insurance play a very important role. We are working also to attach some products attached with technology. So we have in the network, there is a lot of insurtechs that are working to find out technological solutions where they can buy, we can buy insurance very easily online, even difficult products, complex products, so we can have a very simple customer journey. Also to convince the customers, and when I say customers, I can say personal persons or commercial, to buy insurance. And of course, as we are in the meeting of EurAfrican, also Europe should and can help Africa to enhance their security in terms of the risk of their business. For example, MDS is within Africa 10 years. So this weekend we have made 10 years in Africa. We want to continue there. And we are there to help the countries in Africa to reduce the exposure of the risk and protect the risks.
Thank you so much, João. I'd like to continue with Javier Salvador. Javier, you work in a really an extremely fascinating area, at least from my point of view. It's an area that I read on heavily and in a very interesting way. Submarine cables are a sine qua non infrastructural condition for everything that is related to digital, full stop, no? And to integration and global connectivity. So this is a fact. Tell us about that. What are the efforts and the way to achieve a better integration? Also, what are the key challenges and vulnerabilities? And what can we do to prevent major disruptions or even a digital disaster?
Good morning, Anna. First, I think we did a very good job confusing you, because my name is Norman Albi and Javier.
Yeah, well, yes.
So sorry.
The panel is totally different, but it's great because all very interesting interventions, really good.
This
really
is a
good.
dynamic industry. Then, second, we are very happy to be in Carcavelos, close to the beach.
Surprising.
And this beach is very special for us because it's a beach where we land submarine cables in Portugal. So we have 3 landings in Portugal. One is Carcavelos, another one is Seixal, another one is Sesimbra. But this beach that you have people swimming, we land the submarine cables when in winter, not in summer. Summer is not a good moment. And it's one of the main landings of the submarine cables, one of the main places of the digital highway between Africa and Europe. Submarine cables. Well, we are not in the applications, we're in something infra. Infra is something that is necessary to have. We are engineers, so we always say that infra is a necessary condition, might not be sufficient, but it's necessary, okay? So we land we're working one cable, which is Medusa, which is already contracting force. Contracting force means that we start construction. It's not something in the PowerPoint. It's something that after the summer, once the beaches are empty, we'll start with the ships doing the bathymetries in the beaches and starting building the system. The Medusa system connects the African continent and with the European continent. And in the case of Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt, which are the 5 countries which are in the Mediterranean Sea. For the moment, until now, Medusa is a mesh network in the Med. It means that connects the 5 North African countries with at least 6 countries in Southern Europe, including Portugal, of course. Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus. Maybe we'll add more in the future. Why so many connections, or why is the reason of Medusa? Medusa is the answer not to only the internet connectivity. People know that Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, 65% of the connectivity goes to Europe. North Africa, 100%. And Africa grows 45% every year. So my question is, how many cables do we have to build to support that? So there are 2 ways to keep building cables. Or the second one is to include Africa and to help Africa to develop and become part of the internet. And when we say part of the internet, it's not that only has internet access. It's not. Part of the internet is already located in Africa. So Medusa has been designed, of course, with all the North African operators, so with all the African operators that are operating in these 5 countries, but also has been designed with the stakeholders of the digital world to understand what are the conditions that they have to work and to cooperate in that countries and to develop the countries. Okay, because and there are conditions. So you say resilience is, of course, speed is one of the conditions. Resilience of the infrastructure is another conditions. There are some others, opening of the market, etc. Some other ones that we cannot reach, which are regulatory. Okay, so this is how we have designed the cable. On top of this, there is a gateway program that many people have been talking. So Medusa has been part of the gateway initiative in the fact that the DG Connect, part of the European Commission, they have decided to also build on top of the Medusa a network that will interconnect the North African research and education networks. So we have collaborated North Africa Research and Education Network, led by ASREN, Arab States Research and Education Network. So ASREN has got quite a large funds from DG Connect, from DG NEAR, to develop the network. So Medusa is going to interconnect all the universities and to integrate all the universities. When I say connect, maybe the word is to integrate with the giant European network. In this case, and we had the example last week, we were in Barcelona with the EIB Met. There was a research center from Morocco that is working with CERN to support all the pharmaceutical business in Morocco. And this is one example of how Medusa is going to collaborate in the development of the countries. So, infra, I would say working in partnership with the North African operators in this case, and building something that they require and they need and they have designed, and also helping to accelerate the investments of some other parties in North Africa. This is Medusa, providing all the necessary conditions that they require to invest and to develop the countries.
Thank you so much, Norman. So now we follow to Sean Drake, an entrepreneur and a promoter of the startup ecosystem. What can be the contribution of startups to improve digital inclusiveness and to promote growth and integration of the global digital ecosystem? If you could please provide some examples or actions of startups, either per se startups or in their relation with corporates, which I think it's a very interesting area.
Sure. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone. So, slight correction. Sean Drake from Ghana. It says here the United States, so I just want to make that correction. And obviously, I've gone a little bit more handsome than my picture up there, so as you 3 points, I'll keep it very brief. 3 points. I think some of the very important points have already been spoken about and mentioned, namely youth, internet connectivity, the idea that the digital divide is a social impact connected to UN sustainable goals. And, I believe that there are 3 key points that are important to address. First of all, when it comes, in my view, when it comes to Africa, we may not have the highest rate of risk-adjusted returns, but when it comes to social impact, that's where it lies. When it comes to global social impact, from education to healthcare, it's in Africa. So the first thing, my view, is that Africa has to lead that way. And indeed, Africa is leading the way, in spite of the challenges. There's several examples, which most of you are all aware of, from M-Pesa to Flutterwave to Andela, using technology to really make a social impact and create billion-dollar businesses in the space of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But there's one particular company that I want to talk about from the southern parts of the continent called GovChat, because it really shows, it's a great example because it shows the challenges as well as working with corporates and the government to really bring solutions to critical problems. So GovChat, as part of our media and technology operations, we had the opportunity to interview the founder, Eldred Jordan. And so GovChat is a platform, WhatsApp-based platform, simple WhatsApp-based platform that connects citizens in South Africa to the government. And this platform has been operating since, I think, 2017, 2018. And during this time, you know, everything was going well, was operating as a small company, had about 5 members of staff. During COVID was when really GovChat started to grow, because you had, you know, emergency policies, government needed to communicate with citizens, and this is where this platform really started to grow. And, you know, one of the great things about GovChat is because it uses WhatsApp, the data constraints, the internet connectivity that comes with, you know, downloading an app, going on the internet, which are real challenges on the continent, you know, really wasn't there. So they've managed to grow to have at least, you know, 18 million users. However, they reached a number of challenges. So they were faced with, you know, challenges from WhatsApp. So one of the key challenges I think that face the continent is the fact that we use platforms that are built elsewhere, and we leverage those platforms. Third-party platforms from Amazon, AWS to, you know, Meta, and the challenges that come with that are clearly anti-competition issues, and that was the case with GovChat. So they, you know, spent loads of money that they could have used to build their business. They spent loads of time to fight a case against Meta. Fortunate for them, they had the capital and they were able to win that case. So, you know, GovChat is just one of many examples, but an example that demonstrates the challenges, also demonstrates the opportunities that lie on the continent, using simple technology like WhatsApp to really connect in a time that matters, in a time where, you know, millions of citizens needed social grants to, you know, to stay afloat, to live, and also from a government perspective, getting the data, getting information, being able to communicate to fellow citizens was crucial during that time. Many governments around the world, not just South Africa, needed to find out what was going on, what were the numbers, you know, at what rate is the virus spreading. They use simple WhatsApp API to gather all that data and to, you know, foster communication and deeper engagement with government and fellow citizens. Citizens in rural areas who wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to engage in government services in the way they got to engage in that. So, you know, there are many examples, but this is just one that, you know, highlights, I think, the challenges as well as the simplicity of using technology. That wasn't built on the continent, but here are entrepreneurs leveraging technology and solving real social economic issues. So I think, you know, going back to my 3 points, I know I drifted off a little bit in that story because it's close to my heart. But I think social impact is natural for Africa, and there is a need for African entrepreneurs to lead the way as far as social impact is concerned. Lead the way, really lead the way. And I think it's natural for African entrepreneurs to do so. And I also think that in collaboration with the world, the US, Europe in particular, to leverage the technologies that currently exist, to leverage capital, to grow those technologies, develop those technologies further. But I think if we're here talking about social impact, if we're talking about digital divide, it has to be led by the African entrepreneurs. It has to be led by the youth, and together we solve the, you know, UN sustainable goals. We reach those goals and solve the critical challenges and problems that come with that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Very interesting intervention as well. So, and also it links very well with the question I'm going to ask to Po Shi Hen, because, and talking about one of the last things that Sean mentioned, the issue of capital and finance, because you are in this sector, Po Shi Hen, and you know better than most of us that without money or funding, it is difficult to navigate all these challenges. Specifically, the financial sector is one of the sectors nowadays being more disrupted by and transformed by digital technologies. How do you see that happening, notably in where you operate, and if possible also providing an example, can developments in the financial sector and financial instruments linked to digital help promote development and prosperity, hopefully in a more sustainable and inclusive way?
Yep.
That's good.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Anna, and thanks for the government to have us here. We're humbled to be here, and also humbled to be the last 10 years move with Africa and develop with Africa in terms of the innovation of fintech. So before I kick off, I just want to ask everybody in the audience, how many of you have moved money in Africa, or out of Africa, or within Africa? Please raise your hand. And please keep your hand raised if you think it's somehow difficult, expensive, and inconvenient. So thanks so much for your participation. And that's the problem we are solving on a continent when it comes to cross-border payments. So when we launched in Kenya, where I used to live in Kenya for 3 years, working at Barclays Bank before joining the company, we saw this boom of mobile money where mobile money functioned pretty well in a country. But when you go beyond the operator, when you go beyond Vodafone, you go to MTN, and when you go beyond a country, it doesn't work at all. Or the costs become exorbitant, and it's just unbearable for any business or individual to trade with each other. And not to mention, if you're in Kenya or in Uganda, where you want to trade with your neighboring country, like I used to visit one of our clients, which is a Japanese car importer in Uganda. And I saw this crazy thing, coming from Taiwan, lived in Europe, and moved to Kenya and to Uganda, and see this Japanese importer literally pile cash, like in their safe, and because they think it's much more easier for them and faster and guaranteed that the money wouldn't get lost in a correspondent banking system, and they are just sending money to their neighboring country, Kenya, where they cannot trade with each other, or it becomes very difficult to trade between Kenya shilling and Uganda shilling. So we saw that problem about 10 years ago, and we really imagined a future of a platform that foreign exchange should trade with each other in local currency instead of going through dollar, not to mention Chinese yen. Probably now in South Africa, a lot of business or banks are settling probably in Chinese yen. So, and so we see a payment system that's pretty fragmented, that's doesn't exist in Africa yet, where it's this Pan-African business. And so for us, now 10 years later, we see this boon of mobile money, we see the boon of interconnecting payment system. Some of the interbank system, for example, in Nigeria and Ghana, it's faster than SEPA here in Europe, or even faster in other countries, in Dubai, for example, in UAE. So the continents, as I agreed with Anita, the continent has risen, and it's actually at the forefront of development. And there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from, let's say, open API, open banking from Europe to Africa. So from where we sit, we see, as we service some of the continent's largest banks, remittance companies, such as WorldRemit, and we partner with banks, like Access Bank, EcoBank on the continent, and also servicing small SMEs or large corporate like Total, et cetera, to help them really move money and remove that friction between, in and out of the continent, even within. We see 3 very interesting trends right now in terms of moving money and moving towards more sustainable development. Number 1 is the remittances moving more digital, right? So as Jack said, after COVID, everything has gone much more accelerated towards digital channel. And we see that significantly move from, used to be cash dominant, in certain markets bank, and now it's mobile money. So in our data, we see 60% of the remittance provider that we work with, their individuals sending money digitally and towards mobile money. And second interesting thing we see is the rise of cross-border, intra-Africa trade and intra-Africa currency exchange. And that's the most difficult part when it comes to, the local commercial banks or the provider to service that need, because right now it's very cash-based. You go on a bus, which is called Matatu in Kenya, and you literally carry a pile of cash and get to the other country and then hand it over to another trade with China. So that still happens right now, and that's just difficult for intra-Africa transaction. And as African Union want to push for intra-Africa trade, that's a real, I think, bottleneck and barrier to enable that. And we are seeing that growing a lot, especially within the economic blocks like Umeå region, and North Africa and South Africa with Nigeria, those big regions as well. And the third thing we see very interesting is a lot of payment companies are actually coming now to Africa. And because the rise of middle class, the people are able to pay more, and the e-commerce is growing, everybody with the smartphone, I used to use my broken Swahili to negotiate with the fruits vendor on the street because you can get the best avocado. She can now buy things from Jumia on the phone, and it's accessible to everybody. So now those payment companies are coming to the continent and ask for very specific, different kind of settlement infrastructure that collect payments from local merchants and settle internationally. And that's something that's either the regulation is not yet clear, or there are countries where it's just very difficult to move funds abroad. So those are the three things that we see really recently, and kind of across 10 years, we see commercial banks see fintech company in the beginning as a threat, but they're coming together and work with regulator and working with fintech and just leverage the technology that fintech company has built and really focus on their infrastructure offering. And kind of that partnership and collaboration, I think we're seeing much and much more, and I think that's important going forward. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your thoughts on these also very interesting perspectives. So with this, we finalize the first round. We still have 26 minutes, and I would like to have a second round, very short interventions, and then open the floor for some questions also to interact with our guests, with our audience. So very interesting and complementary perspectives coming from your respective backgrounds. So I'm going to, just say something, and then whoever wants to add, please keep it to 2 minutes. Because Europe and Africa are two extremely important continents, although, as it was already here said, they live in a broader geopolitical table, and they don't live in a vacuum, of course, as continents, and our continents. So, in digital terms, we have our neighbor to the west, a traditional leader with the humongous platform companies, the US, traditional leader in general terms. And then we have on the eastern side, another giant, which is China, which didn't build its competitive advantage based on humongous private companies, but has some resources, especially state-led, that are not exactly matched. This is not a value judgment. I'm talking about facts. I spent a couple of years working for the OECD on Chinese state-owned enterprises, and our report could not be presented for some reasons. And, talking about facts, our continents don't have the same circumstances, but there are ways, and some of you have already highlighted some examples, there are ways in which hopefully we can lead, even if they are more niche-based or some more specific. And our continents have a lot to give to this world chess. So if you could take 2 minutes, either to make a recommendation on how to improve things, share a use case in which you think that clearly the collaboration between Europe and Africa can really lead the way, it would be great. And then we launch some dialogue with the public. Who would like to start? Yes, please, Audrey.
I'll just start very quickly, because I think it's not just Europe and Africa. From an intervention, a very quick one that comes to mind. We've spoken about the youthful stuff and the different partnerships, and thank you, Pro, for bringing the financial sector acceleration, because in that public-private partnership of banks and fintechs has emerged an inclusivity in closing the divide. So there's also an opportunity. We're sitting at an amazing university. I was invited by one of the alumni here. From an education point of view, there are incubation opportunities. So a simple fact, let's go out there and find ways to generate and apply that local content that's emerging in the African continent and use those incubated platforms. I think, Sean, you'd be surprised to know beyond GapChat and USSD, there are actually more and more innovations and more applications. I mean, Flatterwave, you mentioned, it's something that with Access Bank as a bank was part of the funder. So let's find ways of going in, taking the funds we have, and it doesn't have to be big funds. University partnerships with other universities in South Africa, for example, the educational divide. We've got companies that are looking to partner with government to ensure that the connectivity is there. Once the connectivity is there are amazing, hungry youth that are busy building, ideating to close this divide that are waiting for you to come in and partner with them. So my simple 2 minutes is let's not wait. Let's not look for the formula. Let's go out there and start small, because the basics will get us there.
And it's already starting. It just comes to mind, just sharing you in a few seconds, a case, the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, which is the largest research institute in Europe. The first subsidiary is in Portugal, in Porto, and they are dedicated to apply and collaborate with African countries on issues of health and agrotech, for example, and they are working on this kind of idea that you just brought to the table, Audrey. Thank you so much. Anyone following up? Some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I could go on. Yes, we have the US, yes, we have China, but we are speaking about the Portuguese diaspora.
Yes.
We have our language, and we have a very direct connection with the Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa. Of course, we are very well received over there, and of course, our language is a point of connection. Okay, so we were talking a lot about technology and all these new technologies. Of course, we didn't. Well, I spoke a bit about infrastructures. One of the main problems in at least Angola is the basic infrastructure. Okay, we already have 5G. We already have fiber optics, at least in Luanda, in the capital. Okay, but a lot of times we don't have electricity, so that we can use the internet or whatever. Of course, we have resilience in terms of the usage of electricity or water or whatever, but there is a huge work to do in terms of these basic infrastructures in Africa, okay? And of course, the Portuguese position, I think it could be used to help these African countries, okay, to promote. And yes. As we can see, the people which is living there, Drake was speaking about the transformational projects and the social projects. The people who work there, I worked a lot of years in consulting in Portugal, and now I have the responsibility from Portugal and Angola. And since I'm living in Angola, I could do much more structural projects and with much bigger impact on the country and on the populations. So I think the African countries, with this digital ecosystem as we're speaking, could have a much quicker growth than the other countries that already have a maturity level, a different maturity level, because they hopefully don't do the same mistakes that we do in the past, and they can grow much faster.
Thank you. More thoughts? Would like to, yes, Paul?
Yeah, so I would like to mention a very practical and specific use case around risk. So for us, as we work in financial services, and one of the key things for us to move money is to connect with the European banking system and global banking system. Now, the continent has been de-risked, right? So a lot of Standard Chartered Bank, all the Citibank, JP Morgan are leaving the continent and not providing those settlement processes for the continent when it comes to dollar. And we, in 2018, we had to acquire a Spanish company to maintain our banking accounts to transact with our clients and be licensed. And thankfully, Spanish regulator was welcoming us to, as an African company, to purchase a fintech company in Spain and be able to maintain the banking relationship and continue providing those settlement services for African merchants. Because otherwise, how do they access liquidity of G10 currency? How do they transact with Chinese yen, Japanese yen, all the other currency? The only way they could go to is probably the bureau de change or black markets, right? So that's a very specific use case, I think. Rethinking about risk as a topic for probably European regulators and in general, because we know there's a lot of money from development bank. We know a lot of money flowing from that. But still, when I talk to investors from Europe, when I talk to banks, top banks in European region, they still think that, yeah, we need to work with Africa, but it's still very risky. Right? So how do you digest that risk into your actual implementation and price it? The thing is, the continent and the service provider on the continent is ready to take that premium and able to offer that. But are we ready from the other side to actually take that and say, with this caveat, I'm ready to really grow with you and provide and really give you this access to global platform. So that's one of our learning, and that's one thing that we've learned from the process. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. More contributions to this? Yes.
Okay. I'll follow in the line of the previous speaker. Okay, we invest in infrastructure. So infrastructure, Medusa is 330 million euros, which is quite a lot of money. So when we invest in infrastructure and we want to do some investments in Africa, one of the things as investors, we don't have 330 million, we go to the market and we ask for them, okay? And they give it to us following certain conditions. And one of the certain conditions, of course, Africa only has a few investors that are ready to invest in Africa. Second, we don't have instrument of guarantees. Okay, so when we sign contracts, and you say electricity is an issue, when somebody invests, and you need large investments, large capital to invest for electricity, or large capital to invest for telecommunications, you want to be sure that the contracts that are going to guarantee your revenues, after all, and that are going to allow you to pay your lenders are guaranteed, and they have financial guarantees. Okay, and today, getting these guarantees in some, especially sub-Saharan countries, is extremely complicated. And this is something that we know that the European institutions are working on this. So there is money available, but the problem, and I agree with him, is the risk of the use of the money, okay? Because people is ready to invest. Besides of social returns, there are rates of returns in Africa that allow the investment. But we need to be sure that that investment it gets back to the lenders. So instrument of guarantees is one. Second one, we see in the African countries, the entrepreneurs, they are not playing with the same tools as we have in Europe. So I don't know how they survive in some countries with rate of interest by the banks, 10, 12%, that they have to provide personal guarantees of the house, of the family to go ahead. And we don't have the same situation we have. Okay, now we have a Euribor a little bit high, but we have had access to almost free money for quite a lot of years. So we're not playing with the same rules. I think the best that we can help them is we have the instruments to help them to have access to the same rules or similar rules as we have, because then the money will come.
Thank you. Any more contributions? Short ones, please, so that we have still some time. Yes, João?
Okay. Very short comment. Well, in terms of the platform Europe, Africa, you spoke about US and you spoke about China. But let me remark the case of India, okay? So why India is now the third largest country in terms of new startups? Because the government invests in training for technology. They have English skills. So what happened? US has a lot of demand in terms of people in technology, so they use them as a platform. In Europe, Africa can be used for a similar platform. We cannot forget that Europe lost 10% of people in 10 years.
And will continue.
And will continue. So, but in Africa, we have a huge land, a lot of young people. So if we can, Europe can be a platform. And there is 3 agreements. I read a little bit about it. The last one is 150 billion euros of investment in Europe in Africa. So if we invest in education, if we can invest in training people, at least in my area, in technology, for sure, Africa and Europe, it will be a win-win solution for everybody. And even in Portugal, if we see we have the same language, can be fantastic on that, because us that work in technology, we know how we suffer to get resources to work. So just to add this.
Yes, the demographic winter of Europe, yes. It's, I think, our biggest challenge, more than all economic and political issues, is the demographic one. Any more contributions, or shall we jump to Sean? Yes?
Just the final one, trade. Africa now has the largest free trade area in the world, and given proximity, given the barriers of language across the continent, I think there is an opportunity for Europe to really take advantage of that opportunity and trade with Africa, and take advantage of the AfCFTA. It's huge, and that's just one thing that I think we've not yet mentioned, but I think it's significant and it's important, because there are challenges within the continent, the AfCFTA, to realize that Anglophone, Lusophone, to be able to realize that future will be challenging. I think Europe can contribute to that via capital, via language barriers, and understanding some of the cultures that can have that be realized, whilst US and China do whatever they're doing right now.
Thank you, Sean. Abdullah, would you like to say also a final comment to complete the round?
I will ask about, I will say about talking about Morocco, experience in terms of public administration. So you see, in Africa, we have more and more people has connected to internet. It's very easy in Africa for all states, I think, that to connect today to website and the internet. But the government is not in same growing of development technology and services for the citizen. That's why you must plan and make the strategy of e-government, for example, or e-Africa, to make easy for life for the citizen to take some administration paper, access to services of public services. So I think that is very poor in Africa now. And I would like to share with you some strategies of our country. In 1919, we launched the first strategy of e-government to make sure that everybody can do some administration, public services, and to get some papers. And in 2005, we launched a new strategy to give to our citizens to have the possibility to connect to some not activity, but the procedure of ministry. Like with the first activity that we make in the internet is for the Ministry of Justice to give to the citizen to make some and to take some complaints of some judge, for example, and we have a lot of websites for example, for the education, for healthcare, and we enhanced last year our level from 114 in 1919 to 100 position of Morocco in the report of a digital organization that make some reports of the ranking of the states in the world. That's in 20 years we growing for the maybe 40 position to enhance our level or our ranking from 140 to 100 rank.
Yeah, so sharing best practices on e-government too in favor of the citizens.